A warmish day at the beginning of spring. A bird was singing. Bea pulled the tray out of the cash register and took it into the dark little room at the back of the shop and began counting out the coins. She had done this so many times, for many days and years now, and so she could count them quickly, barely thinking. The coin tray had 4 deep metal wells into which different sizes of coin went, and one by one she would dig the coins out of each well with her thumb and into her palm. When she had a certain number, she would set them down in a neat pile beside the tray and begin again. She never lost count, but if she did, as she used to, there were the neat piles of coins to put her back on the right track again. After she'd finished with the coins, she began thumbing through thin bundles of notes. It was then, while staring somewhere between her hands and the space ahead of them, she saw the angel. It seemed to be bent over inside a nimbus of light. With the angel came a feeling of vague irritation and a strong flavor of peace. Then the angel was gone. The notes were still in her hand. She kept counting. Once the money had been locked in a safe, she walked back into the front of the jeweller's into the waning daylight. Her husband, Aid, was off visiting favoured clients, charming them as he did everyone with his expansive way of talking, his appearance of giving those he spoke to exceptional attention. She smiled to think of him in one of several rooms, in several shops and private homes, holding pieces of silver to the light. She spared a moment of unguarded love for her husband, as one can, she thought, for someone in their absence. She breathed deeply, taking into her the smell of dust and polish, the edge of mould and damp which could not be removed from the shop's interior, the faintest smell of cow shit and straw from the dairy further down the street. There were not many customers at this time in the afternoon. A woman walked in, stared at candlesticks, nodded at Bea and went out again. A man did the same with silver hairbrushes. She put the account book on the counter and began some careful sums, looking up occasionally at a flash in the alley outside. At intervals, she pressed her hands behind her, onto the small of her back, and leaned into them. It hurt after a while, standing here all day. She pondered lightly the angel's latest appearance, its tendency to appear to her at all. She associated it with the death of her mother, though it was true it had begun arriving some time after that had happened. She knew it was not her mother, because the angel simply was not her mother. But it was also true that the angel had never come while her mother was alive, nor her father either. She felt sad, so she thought about the money in the stout little safe. The pain was in her shoulders now. She should stand up straighter. The man who had looked at hairbrushes returned, removing his hat as he walked into the shop. "How do, Mrs. A?" The man was an old friend of Aid's parents, like most in the area were, if they were not instead a relative, a child, or an enemy. This particular friend was best known in the neighbourhood for having been the first to buy his own wireless radio. That was many years ago. He had been among the first two to move away from the neighbourhood of his birth and business, he was a shirt maker by trade, to a large house in the suburbs. Bea knew his wife, knew his sisters, his 4 children and their children. He knew her too, though Bea doubted he knew her first name, and nor would he ever know it, probably. "Hello, Mr. F. Nice afternoon." Nice afternoon, yes. Show me, can you, these here?" He didn't have time for niceties with Aid's young wife. He made that much clear in the way he stroked his grey beard, staring hard at the hairbrushes she brought out and not looking at her face at all. Aid's family were well respected, but she, well, who was to say? She hadn't played with Mr. F's children growing up as Aid had. Where had Aid found her? His neighbours might wonder. And when, they might wonder, would she give him children of his own? Mr. F bought one of the hairbrushes and left again. When she knew he must be far up the cramped little alley, she walked out to have a look. People, and less frequently, a bus or battered vehicle, trundled past the mouth of the alley where it opened onto the road. All grey, oh, very grey. Nothing to get excited about. But she was, deep down, excited, or something like excited. Something like anticipation, something like apprehension, a quickening. It was a strange feeling, unearned, because nothing was happening to her, just the same as always. She was young and married and had no parents anymore. Only some of a very few things were going to happen to her, and none of them were happening now.